All right, what's going on, my friends? Getting ready for a wonderful weekend. RipCityDrive. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino today, getting ready for the toys of summer and looking forward to a big weekend. And we got a lot of things to talk about, man. It's so awesome to have football camps open, having our coaches in action, our players on the field, and we're getting ready for a brand new season, which is going to be awesome. But I want to start out by saying, coming up on Sunday, this Sunday, which is the 27th, it's time for Pup City down at Moda Center. It's going to be on Sunday. And right now, you can still register. I'm going to be down there. It's a 1.3K walk with your dog. Blaze the Trail Cat's going to be there to lead the way. I'll be down there with Puppy Shots, and it's going to support their main nonprofit, One Tail at a Time, which does a great job of providing foster homes and eventual adoptions for animals. They care about animals like we care about animals, and it's going to be good. So if you go to nba.com/blazers/Pup City, you can register right now. Tickets are only $10, $10 to participate, and the proceeds benefit One Tail at a Time. So according to the TrailBlazers, you can kick off Sunday morning at Pup City. It's presented by Tavo. 1.3K dog walk, which is around the Rose Quarter campus. So, again, it's not a long walk. It's very easy. It's very manageable for everybody. Blazer Trail Cat and the Blazer Dancers will lead the way. The festival kicks off at 9, and the walk will start at 10. So you can bring your dog and then take in the sights, the sounds, and all of the other furry friends are going to be bumping around the Rose Quarter. Now, before and after the walk, the festival will feature local vendors. There'll be some great food and drinks. DJ OG1's going to be down there bumping some music. There'll be raffles and an obstacle course with games for both dogs and humans, with cooling stations and plenty of pause on fun. So Pup City is a great way to kick off your Sunday morning. Register now. Just go to nba.com/blazers/Pup City. I'll be down there, and I did it last year, and again, it's quick. It's like, wait, this is over already? But Puppy Shots had a good time, man. He just motored around the track and was pretty excited about, just being there with me and being outside. So I encourage you to come down and join us. All right, I want to talk football right now because camps are here, and I'm pretty excited. I want to talk about the Bears primarily because there's some Bears fans that listen to the show. I know because I hear from them, including Tony out in Boring. But I want to touch on the Broncos real quick for those who are always curious about Bo Nix going into year number 2 with Denver. I've got a lot of connections in Denver in the sports world, in the media world, people who cover the team. And so far, early on, a couple of days into camp, everyone likes what they're seeing right now. Apparently, Bo Nix, the biggest thing they're seeing right now with Nix is just significantly faster in decision-making, getting up to the line of scrimmage, identifying what he wants to do, and getting rid of the football on time and on target, the whole processing thing. And that goes back to what we were talking about with Alex Brink a couple of weeks ago, that going from year 1 to year 2 is a huge game changer. And the big difference for these quarterbacks now is that, or as the way Bo put it a couple of weeks ago, last year he was worried about the offense, getting in the right play, the personnel, understanding the play, and just, he's got all of that going through his mind before he even gets to the line of scrimmage. And so you spend most of your time pre-snap worried about the offense, and then you're like, oh, yeah, we're facing 11 other guys. But what he said is that now that he understands the playbook and the personnel and the different packages, the different personnel groupings, and he's able to get up to the line quicker and not be rushed, it gives him, all the time to be able to focus in on what the defense is doing. And when you understand your offense inside and out, and then you can focus in on the defense, then you're able to identify mismatches. You're able to know and have confidence in where you're delivering the football. So I love it. Now, Evan Ingram, the tight end that they brought in, apparently has been very good in camp thus far. Cortland Sutton has been effective. But keep in mind with the Broncos, one of the few teams in the NFL, all 5 starters are back on the offensive line. Continuity is critical, especially on the offensive front, and the Broncos have that. So there you are. Looking forward to it. The biggest thing I worry about this time of year, and it's not just the Broncos, it's every team, I despise camp and preseason injuries. I hate it. And you get it about every other day. Someone goes down with an ACL. Someone goes down with an Achilles. The season-ending injuries that are debilitating. And all it takes is a couple of key camp injuries, and it can turn your whole season upside down. So I just pray the guys are able to remain healthy. I hate seeing guys go down before the year begins. You put in all that work, all that time, and you can't even get out of camp or preseason without that ridiculous injury. So I'm gripping now. Every day it's like I want to know more, but I really don't want to know because I don't want the report that someone's down for the season or someone's going to be out 8 to 12 weeks. And why is it that injuries are always in even numbers? You know, a guy goes down with a hamstring, it's 4 to 6 weeks. It's 2 to 4 weeks. The knee injury, it's going to be a minimum of 8 months recovery. What's up with that? How come it's not 3 to 5 months? They always do it in even numbers. I don't understand that. So the Broncos are looking good, and Bo Nix, most importantly, processing, delivering the football on time and on target. I look for him and Jaden Daniels with the Commanders to really be sensational this year. They play great as rookies, coming in with more confidence, more understanding, where they can really start to showcase their talents. Now, for the Chicago Bears, look, they made some big changes. You know, they got a brand new coach. They have retooled the offense. They built up the offensive line. They've invested money in the offense, and they're trying to do whatever they can to put their quarterback, Caleb Williams, in a position to be successful. And now that he's got a real coach and an offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson, great offensive mind. Now he's the head coach, but I love what's coming out of camp thus far. I think it was yesterday or the day before that Ben basically shut down practice and pulled his starters, including Caleb Williams, off the field and put in the second unit. And the reason why is that they weren't in the right play, and Caleb Williams was not executing the way that he wanted. Not getting rid of the football on time, not being in the right play, too much improvising. That's going to drive a coach that is focused on perfection crazy. But this is why the Bears are dumb. They kept Eberflus going into last year when they knew they were going to have a chance to draft Caleb Williams. They end up firing him before the end of Caleb's first year, and now he's starting year number 2 with more pressure and a great offensive mind in Ben Johnson as their head coach. What they should have done is made a run at Ben Johnson or that great offensive mind when they drafted Caleb Williams so that you didn't put him in a position to have a bad first year. That's all. But again, they made the wrong call. They kept Eberflus. He got fired before the end of the year, and now they got it right with Ben Johnson. But Ben Johnson, like a lot of guys who are offensive geniuses, and we see this with guys like Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay, when they drop a play and they've got their scheme, they don't want you jacking around. Look, you're not going to go out there. This is not USC. Okay, this is not Oklahoma, Caleb. I don't want you improvising. I don't want you doing what you think is best. I want you to do the play and execute exactly how it's drawn up. I want you to drop back. I want you to read the defense and execute, deliver the football on time and on target, and make sure we're in the right play based on what the defense is showing us. And again, it always gets back to fundamentals. If you listen to Bill Belichick, he'll tell you why he loves Tom Brady so much. Not because of the flashy numbers and the big yards and the arm strength he's able to maintain until the end of his career. It's the little things. Understanding the offense, knowing the personnel, knowing where his players are going to be, getting in and out of the huddle efficiently, and then looking at the defense and making sure you're in the right play before you snap the football. So you have a plan and you know what you need to do to execute and move the chains. And also, when the play's not there, don't compound the problem by turning it over. Just get rid of the football and live to play another down. Ball security, being smart, making sure you're in the right play. And no one talks about those things, but they're critical. So Caleb Williams is now getting real coaching. Now, Lincoln Riley, his coach in college, he's great with quarterbacks, and he's a great offensive mind. But, what we've learned is that maybe he had too much freedom. Maybe just a little bit too much freedom. And then with Eberflus, things just, came apart at the seams. But this accountability is going to be a good thing because, Caleb's either going to respond or he's going to wash out. But I love it because it's like, look, this is how we have to execute. It's details, details, details. You've got to pay attention to every detail and make sure that you understand the play and run it and execute it the way we drew it up. I think this type of tough love, this type of attention to detail, it's going to help Caleb get to the next level because Coach Johnson's going to hold him accountable. But I love to see that type of coaching, that type of intensity. But that's where we're at. But you got to love that. A coach that comes in is like, dude, you guys, we're not doing this right. Everyone off the field. And you're willing to pull your number one quarterback, your top pick in last year's draft, off the field to let him watch because he's not getting it done the right way. That's a good thing. And when you approach it like that and everyone knows the quarterback's not getting the job done, it's good for the coach to show that he can coach everyone and he's going to hold you accountable. So I think it's a great situation for Caleb. And Johnson's going to put him in a position to have success. It's just a matter of Caleb executing. But, again, these things that we saw at USC that you can get away with in college because you're the superior athlete on the field, that doesn't fly in the NFL because the majority of guys on the field are all great athletes. So you can't, it's okay to improvise at times when the play breaks down, but you got to get rid of the football on time. And you can't be dancing around in the pocket, holding on to the football, taking useless sacks, forcing the football, and then turning it over. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch to see how Caleb responds to that type of coaching. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, I want to do a couple things. One, I want to recap the conversation I had with Bill Orm of the Oregonian. A couple of key points that he made I want to share with you that I think are going to be good for you basketball fans here in town. And then I'm going to pay tribute to someone that meant a lot to me coming up at the end of the hour. All right, telephone number is 503-248-0620. You can always listen to the show on our free iHeartRadio app and podcast it there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can join us on YouTube, youtube.com/RipCityRadio 620. So different ways to consume the show. You can reach out to me, 503-248-0620. Whatever you want to talk about on a Friday is fine with me. I appreciate your time. Hope you're enjoying it out there, man. The sunshine is awesome. Pup City coming up at the Rose Quarter on Sunday. Registration is at 9 o'clock. So check-in time's at 9. The walk will begin at 10. That's coming up on Sunday. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620, Rip City Radio. All right, Rip City Drive, Chad doing. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. Looking forward to the weekend. We got Pup City coming up on Sunday. Registration starts at 9 at the Rose Quarter there next to Moda Center, and it's a 1.4K dog walk. Blaze Trail Cat's going to be there. I'll be down there with Puppy Shots, and it should be a great time. Still time for you to register. Just go to TrailBlazers.com. It's presented by Tavo. Now, I had the opportunity to speak with Bill Oram of the Oregonian a couple of days ago on the show, and I want to recap a couple of his thoughts. He is the one who broke the news on Damian Lillard making his return to Portland. And the big question I have about the move, we don't know what Dame's going to look like coming off the Achilles tear. He's still got a full year of rehab ahead of him, so he's got a lot of work to do to get himself right. For years and years, the Achilles tear to an NBA player was the death nail. But with technology and with time, they've gotten better at the procedure, and it's allowed guys to be able to come back and make a contribution. So Dame, he's not going to lose a mental battle, as he pointed out at his press conference. He's going to put in the time and be very diligent in his work, and the team is going to be patient in his return, which is the right choice. That's the right way to do it when you have a guy at his age who's coming back from an Achilles tear. But my big question about bringing Dame back would be this. Let's just assume that he doesn't make any real contributions on the court. Let's take worst case scenario. You bring Dame back, he comes off the Achilles injury, and he's a shell of his former self, and he's unable to make a contribution. My point was, and what I wanted to know is that if you sign a player that means that much to the city and to your fan base and is one of the all-time greats in franchise history, many consider him to be the best. If you bring him in, and it's a major win for the business side because more people tune into your games, more people buy tickets and show up to the games, and you get this great boost, not to mention the reconnection between the team and the community and the fact that you brought a player back that no one wanted to see leave in the first place, and it's a major PR win. Can you still have it be a great signing even if the on-court production is not there? That's what I asked Bill Oram of the Oregonian, and here's what he had to say.
I think that there is a lot to be said for creating, kind of galvanizing the fan base and creating and doing something kind of, grease the skids with the fan base and give them something to sort of hold on to. I think where the Blazers and Damian Lillard potentially get into trouble as it relates to that concept is expectations. Kevin Garnett went back to Minnesota at the very end of his career. There were no expectations of him being a player who brought the franchise success. He was not looking to regain all-star form with the Timberwolves. So while I do think that there's a lot of really good stuff that comes out of Dame returning to the Blazers just from the business standpoint, the connection between the fan base and the franchise, good vibes, righting a wrong with a legend, which I don't think can be overstated, by the way. Actually getting Damian Lillard back in here and having him say that he and Joe Cronin have mended fences. Dame was already, arguably the greatest legend in franchise history. And I think that this only pushes him, higher on that list. Just the decision to come back and to take another run at it with the Blazers, to fight with Portland, and to, sort of back up all the things he said over those first 11 years about what this city and franchise meant to him.
All right, so Bill agrees it can definitely be a win. Now, I don't think Dame is going to not make a contribution. I think he's going to be able to come back and be able to play and be productive. Now, to what level? I don't know. I'm not even sure if he knows yet. I don't know what he's going to be like, how much the injury when he returns is going to change the way he plays. Is he still going to attack the rim with the same explosiveness? Is he going to look to change his game, maybe become more of an outside shooter instead of a guy that's looking to attack off the bounce? I don't know. I know one thing, the shooting's not going to go anywhere. Guys who can shoot will always be able to shoot regardless of whether or not you have an Achilles tear. So I'm not worried about the shooting, the long range, the ability to knock down the three. He's going to be able to do that. The question is, how well will he be able to navigate traffic off the bounce in pick and roll situations, get to the foul line by attacking the rim? I don't know that. How much will the injury hamper his ability to move on the defensive end? We're going to have to wait and see on that, but he can definitely he'll be able to make a contribution just by the spacing on the floor and the way that the defense has to honor him with his ability to shoot from distance. I mean, from way deep. Now, the other question would be, what about roll? And I would say of all the people I've talked to, the majority, aside from a couple of people are supportive of the move to bring Dame back. They just want to see him back in a Trailblazer uniform. But the one thing I don't know the answer to, and the good thing is we don't have to worry about it right now because Dame's, in rehab mode, and he will be for the rest of this season, this upcoming season. But when he does come back, what's the role going to be? Is he going to start? How many minutes per game is he going to play? Is he going to come off the bench? Did they discuss this ahead of time so he knows that his role will come behind Scoot and Shaden, especially if they continue to ascend and they have a big season this year? Is it going to be there to come off the bench and be like a sixth man and provide instant offense and continue to support and provide direction for the young guards? It's a big question I have, and I asked Bill about Dame's role. Here's what he had to say.
I think it's a really delicate balance, and it's I think the Blazers want to say that that's a good problem to have. If Dame comes back and is close to his former self, if Scoot Henderson has popped, if Shaden Sharp's popped, if Drew's bounced back from his tough year in Boston last year, but a good problem is still a problem nonetheless. And I think that, that's a challenge for the coach, but I think one thing that I find really interesting is style of play. The way Dame had played, most of his career, was, pounding the rock and shooting the ball. And the Blazers offense, for a lot of years, was not terribly interesting beyond that. And,
True.
That has kind of changed with Chauncey Billups, where you have playmaking wings now and the ability for, Denny Advia to get downhill and to go 92 feet and for, just a lot of movement in the offense that wasn't there previously. And I talked to Chauncey Billups a bit after the press conference the other day, and he knows that. He has acknowledged that Dame is going to have to play differently than Blazer fans, have been accustomed to watching Dame play. And so there is a question of, old dog, new tricks, tiger and stripes, but one thing that I think the Blazers see as a benefit to Dame rehabbing this year is that he can watch and absorb and really integrate with this team. And when he comes back, and there was a quote in the column I wrote off of the news conference on Monday where, Chauncey said, we don't need him to carry the team anymore. That's not what we need to demand of him anymore. And I think that's really, really important, but it's also going to be a real test of Dame because for 13 years, he's known how to play one way, really.
I would say those are probably my two biggest questions. Dame's role and what's that going to look like next year when he makes his return? And then also, how did Dame and Joe Cronin mend the relationship? How did they come together and find common ground after the way things went down a couple of years ago when Dame requested the trade and then Joe Cronin moved him out to Milwaukee, not Miami? How did they, repair the relationship? I'm fascinated by that. And I like it when people are able to put things behind them, find common ground, and move forward. That's what relationship is all about. Now, the one thing I've always been curious about when it comes to news breaking is how does that process work? How long do you wait before you send out the information? How do you double check and make sure that your information is proper? Well, I asked Bill about the information and that whole process because he's the one that broke the story. Here's what he had to say.
Well, in this instance, I got a tip. I want to say it was 1:45 in the afternoon. I got a tip at about 1:45. Made a couple of phone calls. My tip had been that they were in advanced discussions, negotiations, all the stuff that feels like a precursor to it being a done deal. But I couldn't report that it was a done deal or was definitively happening. But definitively that the Blazers and Dame were in advanced discussions. So I was able to confirm that. And I also knew I wanted to break it on Oregon Live and not just on Twitter because Twitter is, ethereal and not real. And I felt like I had, I thought I had like a wisp of time to get it on our website, which I was able to do and break the news on Oregon Live. But what is it like? It is stressful, Chad. It's extremely stressful. And I was, absolutely, wanting to make sure that I had those T's crossed and I's dotted, touching base with Joe Cronin just to let him know that it was coming and that if he wanted to say anything, to let me know before I published it in about 90 seconds. And then hit and publish and kind of, getting ahead of, most everyone else. I think around kind of almost at the exact same time I published my story, Zach Lowe reported that there was mutual interest. I think I had it, one step beyond that. And then about 5 minutes later, Shams had the report that it was a done deal and he had the terms of the deal. So a really exciting, 25 minutes, to go from sitting on my front porch drinking iced tea with my wife to getting a phone call and going into, insane panic mode. The first person in Portland, by the way, who wasn't part of the decision to know that Dame was coming back was my 9-year-old son, who I could hear from the next room. I told my wife that I had to run and get on that story. And then from the next room, I could hear my 9-year-old son celebrating that Dame was coming back as I was confirming it. So, I broke the news probably to him before anyone else. So he was in the know.
That is so cool. We're talking with Bill Oram from the Oregonian. What I love about this story, Bill, is you've been doing this a long time. It still gets your juices going when you get a chance to get a good piece of information like that. That's cool.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's competition, Chad. And you know this from playing pickup basketball or whatever it is. Your juices get flowing and you want to win, but also, it's a thrill to get to bring that news to people who are going to really care about it. I don't, I could, if I really wanted to break news about, something, two-way contract in Minnesota, I could have devoted my life to that. But to bring people of, Portland, the news about Damian Lillard, was really meaningful. So it was exciting to be at the tip of the spear on that one, even though it's pretty momentary, and then everybody's on to the next phase of the story. But it was pretty cool, and I appreciate you acknowledging that too.
All right, two more things I want you to hear from Bill Oram. This is going back to the relationship and how they were able to mend. And I asked Bill, these two guys coming together after the way things went down with the trade, it's got to say a lot, right, about both Dame and Joe Cronin. Maybe their character, maybe the way they view relationship or people. A lot of times people hold a grudge. Sports grudges can be pretty tough. I've held a grudge before, as I'm sure you have. And I've let it get in the way of important relationships. But with time, sometimes you look back and be you realize I was wrong. And then I go into restoration mode. I want to apologize. I want to connect. I want to see what I can do. And I ask Bill about, Joe and Dame both being bigger men and finding common ground. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, and I think I think that's exactly right, and I think it speaks well of both of their character and their ability to not to get hung up on kind of those personal bitternesses or feelings, and there were hurt feelings on both sides. Obviously Dame didn't get his preferred result from his trade request. Joe Cronin took a lot of arrows for how he handled it. Particularly from people in Dame's camp. And I think I think they both saw the bigger picture here. And, for Dame, that was legacy and a chance to, build what he to try to see through what he was always trying to build here, even if it maybe isn't his most direct path to winning. If he'd wanted to go to, Boston or Houston, maybe there's a better chance at winning sooner. But the idea of seeing something through for him is really meaningful. And for Joe Cronin, it wasn't just, there was kind of two jobs for Joe here too. He sees this as a basketball decision, and we can debate the merits of that, I guess. But he also viewed that he had a responsibility to repair things with a franchise legend. And so when he went into those meetings with Dame, it was both of those things were at the fore. And when he first talked to Dame, he didn't know that this was necessarily for right now. When you're a GM, you only have so many opportunities to sit in front of a player, and talk to them in that way because of tampering rules. And so this was Joe Cronin's chance to sit in front of Dame and clear the air so that Dame and the Blazers were good for whenever Dame decided he wanted to come back. Those meetings didn't necessarily start, just from a place of let's get him back right now. It was let's clear the air and make this right for whenever he wants to come back, whether it's now or later. And it happened to be now.
All right, last thing from Bill Oram. I asked him about the comments from Commissioner Silver when Sean Highkin asked him if it's a priority for the NBA that the Blazers remain in Portland with the pending sale of the team. And then Commissioner Silver said, it's our preference that the TrailBlazers remain in Portland. That wasn't a surprise. But then he brought up the arena and how the Blazers will need a new arena. What exactly did that mean? How did Bill read that? He's been doing this for a long time. Here's Oram's response.
Well, I think it was, I think the term new arena kind of, got my spidey senses going because, that can mean one of two things. And the first question that I think everyone needed to ask was, does the league view new as interchangeable with massively renovated?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. Like I checked on this. Like this is not a Portland needs a new arena built in a different location or, a complete tear down, but like Moda Center needs a massive multi-year renovation. And this is something that current leadership has been talking about. Dwayne Hankins, president of business, has talked about this. There were plans kind of in place, and then then Paul Allen died, then COVID, and everything kind of has gotten kind of pushed down the road kind of inevitably. And this is going to be the task of a new owner. But now that is part of kind of what you're taking on as an owner is, potentially, maybe not quite $1 billion, but let's just say $1 billion renovation of the building. And in Portland, is a new owner going to come in and pony up $1 billion out of pocket to renovate the building? That's not realistic in the modern landscape. And this is where the conversations about, keeping the Blazers in Portland, I think, get a little bit real because, will the state pony up? Will local agencies pony up to contribute and take, 40%, 50% of the obligation on the renovation off of a new owner? Because if the answer is no, and voters don't approve bonding or whatever it takes, that's when you could see a new owner saying, why would I pay $1 billion for a new arena when there's a brand new arena, sitting empty during the winter? I mean, outside of the Kraken, but an NBA ready arena, sitting available, 3 hours north. And I think that's where those concerns become valid. And that's why I thought the Oregonian editorial board had just an outstanding editorial 2 Sundays ago on this issue and made the point that Portland needs to establish itself as the ideal location for this team, not just because of nostalgia or obligation, but because, local leaders have aligned everything. So it's the best place for the Blazers to remain kind of against all other possible suitors too.
All right, there you go. Bill Oram. Appreciate his response. And I felt a lot better, his insight on what Commissioner Silver had to say about the arena. I felt better after Oram had done some digging on that it doesn't necessarily mean they need a brand new crib, but they definitely need to go through the full renovation because the Moda Center site's been there for 30 years. So it's time for a makeover. And if you go in there and spend the money that is necessary to get the building in tip-top shape, and then hopefully you can give that entire area a facelift. It's unfortunate. I thought it was going to turn out to be something pretty cool. Back in the day, like 95, 96, Kachina down there, Friday's Front Row. They had some businesses. I would go down there in my, early 20s to hang out down there because it was just cool to be right next to the arena because I was a sports nut, but it just never materialized. And now when you go down there, the surrounding area is not, it's not great. I think we all know that, right? If you get too far away from the Coliseum and the Moda Center, especially northward, it's not a good area. It's not great. So hopefully when they do the renovations, they can do a facelift and be able to improve it. Ideally what would be nice in the future, whoever the new owners are, that they can eventually, put a new arena out in, I don't know, Hillsborough or Beaverton or Wilsonville, and then make it one of those real estate deals where you've got the arena and then you build up the entire area around it with, I don't know, condos, restaurants, businesses, and make it a destination point. And the places that they have in the nation where you can do that, like the Battery down in Atlanta is phenomenal. Even down in Arizona where I love to frequent. Yeah, Glendale is a long-ass way away from Phoenix. Like it's a bit of a drive outside of town to get to a football game out there. But they've even put in some nice stuff around that. Like they've got the hockey arena out there. They've got the outdoor shopping area with restaurants. They've got the sweet outlet malls. I've been down there before. It's pretty cool. So, I mean, that's the type of thing I'm looking for here in Portland at some point. Maybe they renovate and can redo or, add to that area down there, at the Rose Quarter. Or maybe in the future, new ownership will end up building outside of the city. Maybe if you get outside of the city and get to Wilsonville or Hillsborough or a place where it's a little more business friendly, maybe they'll be able to get something done, which will be nice. But at least we can. So far this week, we have heard from Bill Oram, also Softy, two people who shed some good light. I'm confident that the NBA is going to figure out a way to get this done. And then we can forget or stop worrying about the Blazers going to Seattle once and for all. It's just one of those things. It's like the thorn in your side that you always worry about, or that we grip about, or that we're concerned about, that we don't want to see go down. And so there you have it. That's the latest. We'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Hope you're enjoying your fabulous Friday. Looking forward to a big weekend. Don't forget Pup City coming up Sunday down at Moda Center. A 1.4K walk with the dogs. I'll be down there with Puppy Shots. Blaze, the Trail Cat's going to be down there. You can register now at TrailBlazers.com. But get down there, and it's going to be beautiful. Great weather, hanging out with the dogs. You can't beat that. And good vendors on hand. It's going to be fun. So hopefully you'll be down there, Pup City. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, Chad doing live at Spirit Mountain Casino, getting ready for Toys of Summer coming up tonight at 7 o'clock. So a little late work night on a Friday. I have a variety of different things I want to talk about, including the Don Cost Celebration of Life, which is coming up tomorrow. I have a great story that I want to share with you. Many of you may remember recently I replayed the one time I had Don Cost in studio. I had someone reach out after I replayed that interview, and I'll share that story with you. And I want you to jump on board. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Here's what I would like someone to call on. If you have watched Happy Gilmore 2 on Netflix, I would like you to call in and give me your take on the movie. Now, I don't want any major spoilers. I don't want you to ruin it for me, but what I want to know is it good? Did Adam Sandler do a good job with the movie? What's your honest take on it? Is it funny? Is it laugh out loud? Or is it a total disaster? So if you've watched it, I would love to hear your take on it. 503-248-0620. I am going to watch the movie tonight. And I'm excited, but at the same time, I'm also very nervous. And I guess what I'm going to try and do is go in with very low expectation. So if it is an utter disaster, I'm not going to walk away disappointed. It's very difficult to take a legendary film and then make the sequel, the follow-up, especially when the follow-up to this movie's 29 years in the making. So we shall see. I have not seen it. Michael Shacker just told me he watched the first 5 minutes. He likes the premise, and he can't wait to get home and watch the rest of it tonight. So there you have it. I'm going to check it out tonight. And then I'm going to get some rest tonight, and I'll be back out on the golf course tomorrow out at Forest Hills. And I need some type of a redemption day. I played golf today, and I was horrible. It was a miserable experience. It was one of those long days on the course where I felt like it was never going to end. I couldn't putt. I couldn't chip. I was a disaster. And I do not understand. This is the thing about golf that drives me bonkers, is how day to day you can walk out on the course and feel totally different than the previous day. And I think today was round number 59 since the end of the TrailBlazers season. So it's not like I haven't been playing. I've been practicing and playing constantly. But today was one of those days where I didn't have it. I haven't got it. I was atrocious. It was like one of those nights watching the Blazers where they go like 5 of 35 from downtown and everything they put up is a brick. That was me holding the golf club today. It's a crazy game. It's really difficult. It's challenging physically, mentally, everything about it. And that's why it's so wonderful, because when you get into a good pocket, a good stretch where you're getting that crispy contact and you're hitting the shots that you want to hit, it's intoxicating. But on a day like today, it's like, all right, I'm done. I'm shutting it down. I'm going to take this club and jam it through my eye socket, and then I'm going to go jump in the pond and die. But there's always tomorrow. And the weird thing is, I'll go out tomorrow, and I'll feel different than I did today. That's why I respect these professional golfers and the way they're able to go out there and dominate a course in a major, in conditions, with the fastest greens in the world. And Scotty Scheffler's out there making it look easy. Unreal how good those guys are. I respect it a great deal. So if you've seen Happy Gilmore 2, please call in. I want to know your take on the movie, if it's great, if it's funny, or if it's a total disaster. A lot of times with movies or sequels, they're terrible. You know, people try to make it happen. They want it to be good, and it's awful. All right, Tony in Boring says Happy Gilmore 2 is getting the doing NBA referee treatment. That's true. I've told you my philosophy on officiating in the NBA. Yeah, they're terrible. And it's amazing to me how many people make excuses for the officials. Well, Chad, you have to understand it's a really tough game to officiate. Okay. I'm sure it is, especially when you have old guys with cataracts trying to keep up with superior athletes. Yeah, it's got to be tough. But they've got to be better and be more consistent. And my biggest problem with these NBA officials, night to night, game to game, it's called wildly different. There's never consistency from game to game. And so what I've learned to do over time so that I can keep sanity, because I actually care about these games like you do. Like when I'm watching a sporting event and I'm fully invested, and I really want my team to win, and then you've got an official out there who is altering the outcome because they stink to high heaven, I can't take that. Like, I can't accept the fact that these leagues that are worth billions of dollars and these games where you have players out there worth millions playing for championships, that they allow the outcomes to be determined at times by officials who have no clue of what they're doing. And again, even if you're not actively trying to manipulate the outcome of a game as an official, like, you don't have to go Tim Donaghy to have a major impact on the game. Because if you're not calling the game the right way and you're putting one team on the foul line where they're getting up 40 free throws and the other team's got like 10, that can determine an outcome of a game. So it used to drive me bonkers. Or these idiots in the NFL, these old guys who have no idea what pass interference is. They're just making it up as they go along. And then they put these two old guys with cataracts underneath the uprights, and they're looking straight up trying to tell me if the ball went through the uprights or not. There's got to be a better system. And that's why I love the fact that Major League Baseball is going to move to the computerized system. We have the technology now to be able to solve a lot of these issues. And you watch enough baseball, those umpires are terrible. Hey, what's up with the strike zone? And that's why these batters get so frustrated, because it's like, dude, that was a ball in the first inning and now it's a strike? Just be consistent so I know what the strike zone is, you moron. And then here's the best part, too. These guys can stink it up behind the plate, but yet for some reason it's unacceptable if the player or the manager wants to complain about balls and strikes. I wouldn't complain about the balls and strikes if you didn't suck at your job, dude. So I get it. I understand the frustration. So what I had to do was adopt a new mindset. You know, as you get older, you learn to, at times, I mean, I am a human being that is greatly flawed. I've got many flaws. I've made catastrophic mistakes, and I've done things that would make a billy goat puke, in the words of Rambo. I'm a horrible human being on many levels, but I've learned how to do certain things as I've gotten older where I don't have the energy to go crazy about this. I've got too many other things to worry about, and that's the way it was with the officiating. So what I chose to do was I go into every game, especially the Blazer game, and I just work off a basic assumption. The NBA officiating tonight is not going to be good. They're not going to call a balanced game. They're not going to be consistent. There's going to be things that make you're going to be scratching your head. The replay system's going to stink. It's going to drive you bonkers. So just assume that's the case, and then that way I don't have to get upset. And so I'm trying to help you. That's my mindset. I just assume that it's going to be bad, and then it is, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I expected that. That was my anticipation. And if you get the occasional game that's called properly, then you just celebrate it as one of those nice moments in life where you're like, hey, those guys got it right tonight. Now, I don't have that experience in the NBA too often, but when they do get it right, it's like, oh, good job, guys. Nice work. Yeah, my goodness. And we can all remember games, right, especially as TrailBlazer fans, where the call did not go our way. Or you've watched your team playing football or baseball or whatever the case may be, and it's like, yeah, didn't really go our way tonight. That stuff drives you crazy. But, yeah, that's my – and I've got to take the same approach with Happy Gilmore, too. You know, it's Adam Sandler's great. He's got some movies that make me laugh and are classics. Wedding Singer is awesome. That is a great film. Happy Gilmore is a terrific film. I really like Bulletproof with him and Wayne's. It doesn't get enough love. He's had some great movies, but he's also had a few that were just awful. I still can't decide if I like Billy Madison or not. I think I do, but there's a couple of parts of the movie that are a little bit weird, but I think I'm down. But Happy Gilmore is a classic, and so is Wedding Singer. The one-liners are incredible. I mean, me and my buddy Luke, my workout partner, we throw movie lines at each other constantly. Happy Gilmore comes up all the time, as does pretty much anything with Jim Carrey. Wedding Singer is awesome. He's going insane, and I'm reaping all the benefits. There's so many things you can say. I'm sure a lot of you do that as well. But, no, I take that approach. So if you've seen Happy Gilmore, too, let me know what you think. I'm going to watch it tonight and check it out. I'll get a little bit of rest tonight, golf tomorrow. And I'm telling you, if you haven't been out to Forest Hills, you got to get out there and check it out. The course is really in great condition. I've played multiple courses in the area, but the work that Marcus has done with his course there is top-notch. The greens, the best I've played on. The fairways are great, and the work they've done to improve tee boxes and a few of the holes with what they've added in with green structure and sand traps, it's great. And then you get outside of town just a little bit, so you get away from some of the ancillary noise, and it's peaceful out there. The other course that I grew up on that my dad would take me to was Heron Lakes. My dad retired from the Army Corps of Engineers, and I was talking to someone the other day. There's a possibility that they may have to fix the levee down there, and if they do that, it's going to wreck the golf course. And so now I'm like, hey, what's up with that? I don't like losing access to public parks. I don't like it because I'm not convinced that the city council understands the value of the public parks the way that we do. And so when one goes away, you have to worry about another one going away. And we've seen golf courses recently get bought up because you've got all that land and it can quickly be turned into a residential area or some type of shopping center. And it can be turned into massive profit. And the land value is so high that it's really hard for some of these golf course operators to turn down the opportunity to make big money. And so I don't like to see public golf courses go away. And we've already had some of that happen with Colwood, which has been reshaped into an awful par 3 course, terrible. And then Broadmoor, which was my dad's favorite course. He used to play that. He had a men's league he played in out there. That's one of those courses that I grew up on because he was teaching me how to play the game of golf. And I have great memories out there, but now it's gone because they got rid of that course. And we've seen, a course out in Banks recently get taken away. So that kind of stuff makes me nervous because it's nice to have those parks. And, it's funny. I don't understand these things when I'm younger, but you get older and you look at some of the areas you grow up in. It's nice when you have certain areas like parks or places you can go that still look the way that they did years and years ago, where you used to spend time maybe with friends or family, or maybe a place you and your dad used to go to, or maybe a place where you used to always take your dog to walk. Like I like having access to those things. And, the entire state of Oregon has been known for years as one of the best states in the union in terms of access to great local golf courses. So, props to Marcus. Forest Hills is in great condition. And the weather right now is awesome. I mean, great weather. Terrific weather. And that's why you got to come out and join me at Pup City on Sunday. Registration is going to start at 9 right down there at the Rose Quarter. And the walk, 1.3K, will kick off at 10. Blaze the Trail Cat, the Blazer Dancers, DJ OG1. I'll be down there with Puppy Shots, and it looks like the weather's going to be perfect. I know Tony and Boring is going to be down there. I'm trying to get the Godfather down there, so come out and join us. You can jump on board 503-248-0620. And, of course, you can always podcast and listen to the show live on our free iHeartRadio app. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. I love it. I'm getting text messages from Travis Demers, voice of the Trailblazers, right now. He is at Yankee Stadium, Yankees and Phillies. And I told you that he was taking his dad to the game. He's back home visiting family, which is really cool. And he knows one of the radio engineers who works for the Yankees. He's also the same guy that works and does games for the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets. So when Travis is on the road with the Blazers, this is the guy that will take care of him in arena in Brooklyn and New York. So his connection was able to get him set up with tickets, and then also got his dad up in the press box where they could do a little behind-the-scenes tour. And this is obviously thrilling for Travis's dad because he's a huge Yankee fan. But he sent me this picture right behind home plate, up in the box, and they're standing right next to Susan Waldman.
Roger Clemens is in George's box, and Roger Clemens is coming back. Oh, my goodness gracious. Of all the dramatic things I've ever seen, Roger Clemens standing right in George Steinbrenner's box announcing he is back. Roger Clemens is a New York Yankee.
That's one of the greatest sound bites of all time. Of all the dramatic things, I think Trav said she might be in her 80s now. She still looks pretty darn good, Susan Waldman. So props to Trav for taking care of his pops, and I'm glad that they're there to be able to enjoy a game. Now, I had someone reach out to me. This is very special. You might like to hear this story. But it was one of those situations where I had a chance to play an interview recently. Don Koss, longtime radio DJ. He was also a radio station owner and operator, and, of course, known for his many years of being involved with Portland wrestling and being one of the guys behind the mics. Well, Don Koss recently passed away, and that was stunning news to me. And I'm looking at the Celebration of Life poster that was sent out, and it says, "Join us in a celebration of life honoring Don Koss, who lived from August 10th, 1939 until January 15th, 2022. And I think it wasn't until maybe a couple of months ago, I can't remember exactly what the captain, Rich Patterson, said, but they had some type of Portland wrestling event, and that's where word started to get around that Don Koss had passed away. And I didn't know he had passed. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and I hadn't heard from anyone that had worked for him at one of his stations, so I didn't know. And so it caught me by surprise. Well, the Celebration of Life is coming up this weekend, and it's pretty sweet because it's going to be held at Mount Olive Baptist Church Family Life Center, which is formerly the Portland Sports Arena. It's that place off of Chautauqua. I mean, that's the perfect and fitting place to have a celebration of life for Don Koss. Well, after I played his interview, it was pretty neat. For those of you who don't know, when I first got into radio, one of my first bosses was Don Koss. He owned and operated two radio stations. He had a Spanish station, La Pantera, which was based out of Woodburn. And he also had KCKX 1460 AM, which was cowboy country. So they played legitimate country music. But KCKX also would carry local high school sports for both Regis and Staten out of Staten, Oregon. Well, one of my other contacts, John Phillips, had called me up one day and said, "Hey, this gentleman named Don is looking for someone to call high school games for him. Would you be interested?" Well, this is back when I was trying to get my foot in a door anywhere, and I was like, of course. I didn't ask about how much money I would get. It didn't matter to me. It's like, you want me to call games on the radio? I'm in. So I met Don. I went out to his station one night, and I was getting ready to call a game, and he handed me a MapQuest. And for those of you who are younger, before we had the smartphones, when you wanted to navigate and find a location, back in the old day, my parents used to pull over on the side of the road and open up some gigantic map that had all the different roads, freeways, surface, streets, everything. This giant piece of paper that was like the map of whatever city you were in. that was how they did it in the old days. And my dad said it was kind of a pain when you were trying to go to a place you'd never been to before and you're trying to pinpoint on the map where you were going. Well, with technology and the internet, they came up with this thing called MapQuest, where you would put in the address of where you wanted to go, where you were taking off from, and then it would produce a map for you with the step-by-step directions, and you would just print out a piece of paper, and then you would know exactly where you were headed. Well, this first game that I was calling was at this location in Salem. It was, the name of the school was Salem Academy, and they were taking on Regis. And I said, okay, I'm in. And it was a basketball game. So he handed me the radio equipment and gave me this MapQuest, and he's like, here, have fun. And I think the amount that I got for the very first game I called for Don Cost. Now, keep in mind, his station was based out of Woodburn. I lived in Vancouver, and the games I was calling were spread out, around the valley, either in Staten, Oregon, or in Scio, or in Amity, in Dayton, all these areas, right? My first check that I got from Don Cost for a high school game was $35. And he would also hand me a sheet with the sponsors on it. And that first time he gave me a check for $35, I thought I had made it. I was like, this is it? I'm getting paid to call games on the radio. Well, as I got to know Don, and I worked and called games for a long period of time, about 9 years that I worked for Don Cost doing Regis and Staten games, football, baseball, basketball, both boys and girls. It was pretty awesome. And that's when I started to understand his involvement and deep involvement in Portland wrestling. And so he'd tell me stories, and he would talk about the old days, but it was just neat to get a chance to know him. And he was always really good to me and giving me opportunities, and he would give me some feedback. But he gave me the freedom to call games, and then I could have people work with me if I wanted to have someone on the broadcast. He just gave me the freedom to do it, and I could do it my way, and he would give me some feedback and pointers. But he was a great man and very influential in my life, but I loved him. So after I had him in studio, and he was in studio for quite some time, it was a great interview, and this is back, I don't know, probably 10 to 12 years ago. Well, I replayed it after I found that he had passed, and I got an email from a lady, and I did not recognize the name, and come to find out it was his daughter. And she told me that she was thankful that I played the interview and that she had learned things in that interview about her dad that she never knew. And she asked me if I could send her a clean copy of the interview so she could have it. And I was very happy to do that. And that's when she sent me the notification of the celebration of life of Don Cost. And I thought that was pretty neat. And so I was able to give something to her that drew a connection, a deeper connection between her and her father that she can hold on to, which is really nice. And it gave me a chance to meet somebody else in his family, of someone who really took care of me. And I think most of us can relate to this. All I can tell you is I've been very fortunate to have, different people in my life who have come around at just the right time. Mentors, people in the broadcasting business, people who give you an opportunity, people who encourage you at the right time, and in some cases, people who give you the proper criticism, who tell you the things you don't necessarily want to hear, but yet they're very helpful, and it continues to push you forward. But Don Cost is one of those guys. Now, the gentleman who introduced me to Don Cost, John Phillips, many of you older heads know him. He had PDX Sports Line. He was big in, radio and television. He was one of the original guys tied in with Nike back in the day, creating relationships between Nike and the NBA players in the early days. And he was he's a coach and was very involved in youth sports for years. I became very good friends with his son, John, who's now living down in the Bay Area with his wife and family. But John Phillips is terrific. And I met him over at KVN Radio in Vancouver. And I was sitting in the lobby. I had made a connection with this lady, Pam Atherton, who was also very important in my early days because she came in to do a tour at the health club I was working at. And you would fill out this slip with your name and your address, and then you would list your occupation. and then we would use that to follow up on to see if we could sell memberships. That's where I worked in my young days. Started there before I finished high school, and then continued to work at the club through my college years. Well, when I saw a radio announcer on this slip, because I was giving her a tour of the club, right away I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I started talking to Pam and told her about my love of radio, and then she asked me if I could come in and be a part of her morning show on K-Van and give some home exercise tips. And I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. I'm in. So I did that for several weeks, and she was kind enough to give me access to do that. Well, one day I was sitting out in the lobby waiting to go on, and I met John Phillips. He's like, what's your name? I said, Chad. And he said, hey, would you like to be a part of my high school broadcast? And I was like, well, of course, I'm in. So I started doing high school broadcasts on K-Van, and then Gavin Dawson was also working at K-Van at the same time, and that's where I met him and formed that connection and friendship, and then everything else kind of took off from there. And then what happened is, because Gavin went from K-Van to the Fan in Portland, I was able to go and get my foot in the door. And the program director at the time over at the Fan, his name was Alan Davis, and I went in and I set up a meeting with him. And I went in and I just said, look, Alan, I know that you probably don't have room on staff and I have no experience, but I don't want any money or anything. All I want is permission to be able to come in the mornings and shadow Gavin. I just want to sit with him and watch him operate the board and do updates, and I just want to observe. Just let me do that. And he let me do it. And this is back before they had all the stricter laws on internships and interns having to be paid or this or that or whatever. And so I would just hang out with Gavin, watch, learn, and listen. And then that experience in combination with the work I was doing with John Phillips over at K-Van and Don Koss, I eventually got on as an intern at the Fan. And Jason Swigard was my director, my boss, and he would schedule me, and I would do work for him. And then I finally got hired as a board operator. And then what I did is I had a very simple philosophy where I just did anything and took any shift that the boss wanted, and then hoping that would turn into opportunity, and it did. Well, right around probably 2006, 2007, with some of the financial issues, the radio station went through a lot of cuts, and so I was reduced to very minimal hours, and it was frustrating. But then we got word that there was a new sports station coming into town, and sure enough, the stations at the time were owned by Paul Allen, and it was KXL, and then they took one of their music stations and turned it into 95.5 The Game. Gavin went there, and then I was able to get a job and a radio, James Derby, Gavin Dawson, critical. And then Tim McNamara, who was the big boss there for Vulcan, and the radio guy who was encouraging, but he was also no nonsense, and he would be a truth teller. If he liked something, he would tell you. If he didn't like it, he would tell you. At least you knew he wasn't BSing you. And I appreciate that. Jason Barrett, who now runs Barrett Sports Media, he was the boss down in San Francisco who brought me down to the station down there and gave me the opportunity. And he was great because he was well-connected and was a visionary and was a radio guy and loved the business. And he got me connected down there before he took, who is one of my, and John Lund was great because I just communicated with him the other day, checking in to see how he and his son George are doing. And John's doing really well, still down in the Bay Area. Travis Demers, also one of those guys who has been paramount in my work life, because Travis was the guy who, paved the way to get me back to Portland. When Jason Barrett, left San Francisco and they brought in this new guy from Canada, I knew that it wasn't going to last long. When it's kind of like a coach or a GM or a change in a pro sports team. All right, big shout out to, I think his name was Cole Kaisner, a young man I met on the golf course today. He jumped into my usual group, and I got a chance to play with the doctor for the very first time. One of my favorite things about being out on the course is you run into a lot of interesting people. I would say most of the people you run into on the golf course are typically, good people or good dudes. You get the occasional, crazy person, but that comes up anywhere you go in life, right? I think we can all relate to that. But this guy, Cole, I think he was 22 years old. He was about 6'3", very good-looking young man, and he had just picked up golf probably about 3 years ago. But it was neat to see him because he's 22. He went to Skyview, and his life is now starting to take off. He had just gotten married 2 weeks ago, and he and his wife live in Ridgefield. They just got a home, and I was talking to him about what he does, and I'm fascinated because there's so many different ways to make a living. He is an elevator repairman, and it's like a union job, so he works with a bunch of other guys, and he does work as far up north as Longview and also down into Portland. So he's got all these different places he works, but he was showing me pictures, I think, of a job he was doing at St. Vincent's of what it looks like inside, and I'm like, is that a dangerous gig? Like, do you get scared? And he goes, well, when you're standing underneath an elevator in the shaft, you just have to trust that the equipment is going to function the way that it's supposed to, and that you're not going to have something fall on top of you and get crushed. But it sounds like it's pretty safe. But it was just neat to see a young man with his life, really starting to take off. And I had never talked to an elevator repairman before, but I think he enjoys the work. Now, the other guy I play with is a doctor. Now, what is the type of doctor that works on, like, your lower half, like the nether regions, like specializes in work right below the belt? Is that a urologist? I think that's a urologist. I don't go to the doctor very often. Fortunately, I've been blessed with pretty good health thus far, but again, I'm, approaching the 50s, so we'll see how that continues to play out. But I was talking with this doctor, and he didn't want to be called doctor. He's like, yeah, I don't like to talk about it too much. I don't want my, cover to be blown. But most importantly, I don't need people calling me doctor. Like, I don't need that in my life. And I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. He just wanted to keep it low-key. But he was talking to me about some of the different procedures that he does and some of the different problems that men have and what they'll come to see him for. Because we were talking about men and their lack of desire to go to the doctor. Like, usually, and I see this with my mom, because my dad, he's always been in really good health, and he's taking no medications, like no prescriptions, no medications, and he's like 77 years old. And he went to the doctor recently, and the doctor said, you're an anomaly. No medications, no prescriptions, are you sure? Like, she couldn't believe it. But it was my mom who had to push my dad out the door to get him to go to the doctor, because men don't typically like to do that, especially men from that generation. My dad's like, well, I don't need to go through the process. It's probably just this, and I don't need to waste the money to, do this or do that or whatever. So we were talking about that, and then he was explaining a procedure, and I'll try and keep this simple and clean all at the same time. I just didn't know that people considered this. I didn't know that this was a possibility. I had no idea that you could make this happen. Apparently, he's got a procedure where he can do an injection into the Schmendrick and to increase girth. And he was explaining it to me, and then I was hearing the word injection and thinking about the nether regions, and it made me uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh, why would anyone want to take an injection there? That's crazy. And then I was thinking, like, girth. Is that something people think about? And I didn't ask the doctor that, but I'm like, wow, people want that? They desire that? And he was telling me, like, that's a real popular procedure. I had no idea. Again, what fascinates me about life are all the different ways that you can make a living. All the different things you can do to make a living. Like, I was talking with Duke, the UPS guy, the other day, and he's been doing it for a long time, but now he's at a point where he might be looking to do something else. And I think the grind of delivering packages every day, dealing with people, it kind of wears you out. But these doctors, the things they can do now with the advancements in technology, mind-blowing. Simply amazing. Like with, some of the material they can use, like when my mom, had that fall in the parking lot and she destroyed her shoulder. The type of materials they can put inside of you and repair your body with that titanium. I know guys who are out on the golf course I talk to where they get like a hip replacement or a knee replacement, and they're up and bumping around in just a couple of weeks. And a lot of the old guys, that's a popular procedure. You get the hip replacement, no arthritis, and you can still move and play golf. And I respect the old guys that are out there, 75 to 85 years old, still walking the course. And a couple of those guys I see, they have great flexibility. And that's where I'm at now. When I was younger and Luke and I started working out, I think there was a little vanity involved in that. Oh, I want to look good. I want to have muscles. I want to be lean and look strong and be strong. But as you get older, it's like, yeah, looking good is fine. But I want to be able to move. I want to be able to walk a golf course, go on a hike, play some pickup basketball. I want to be able to swim and do this. Like, movement is all that matters. Just being able to move and move pain-free for as long as possible. Like, that's what motivates me now, is being able to sleep well, feel good, be strong, and have movement to be able to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. But that's the cool part, man. Everyone's got a story, so many different ways to make a living, and I'm fascinated by all of it. And so it was neat. I got to talk to a doctor. I talked to a young guy where his life is starting to take off, elevator repairman, and I learned some things about procedures I had no idea could be done. Had no clue. Well, Doc, what can you do with the tic-tac? I've got a tic-tac issue. Can you solve that for me? What can you do for that, my friend? Anything? No, Chad, you're beyond help. There's nothing I can do for you. All right, we'll keep things rolling. I do want to talk some football. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Again, my plea, if you've seen Happy Gilmore 2, which is now out on Netflix, I don't want any major spoilers, but I'd love to know if the movie's funny, did it make you laugh, or if it's a total disaster. I need preparation for what I'm getting into tonight when I watch it. I'm excited, but I'm also nervous because I don't want it to be a train wreck like so many sequels are. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Hope you're enjoying your Friday. Beautiful day outside. Pup City coming up at Moda Center on Sunday. You can join me and Puppy Shots in a 1.3K dog walk, which will benefit one tail at a time. I think it's like $10. So come out and join us. Registration opens up at 9. The walk will start at 10. And it's a nice little route around the Rose Quarter area there by Moda Center. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Chad doing Rip City Drive live at Spirit Mountain Casino, getting ready for the Toys of Summer. I've been doing the drawings down here now for like 17 years, and tonight's prize is a pretty good one. $3,000 in cash. You also get your choice of a brand new motorcycle or jet ski, or you can have $8,000 in free play. You also get a Yeti cooler and some Yeti cups. So good prizes tonight. You know, I think I'm ready to project who's going to win each division in the NFL. You know, camps are underway, and so we're starting to get a feel for what these teams are about. And now we just got to hope that no significant injuries take place where guys are going to drop like flies and miss the entire season. But it happens every year. There's always at least one or two or three key injuries, and I hate it. I don't like it. I can understand why some of these coaches are a little bit leery when it comes to having their starters out there on the field in the preseason. But in the NFL, I think I know the 7 teams in the AFC who are going to make the postseason. But it should be a very competitive conference because there's so many good teams. I think the balance of power in the NFL is more tilted towards the AFC. Even though the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, I think there's more quality teams in the AFC compared to the NFC. In the AFC East, I think you're going to have one playoff team, and I think that's going to be the division winner, which is the Buffalo Bills. And for the Buffalo Bills, they've now reached this point in time in the Josh Allen era where it's Super Bowl or bust. They just haven't been able to solve the Kansas City Chiefs riddle. They can't beat them. They can't get over. They play them close. But when push comes to shove, it's Patrick Mahomes who's making the key plays at the end of the game to win it. And for Josh Allen, it's very simple. He's got to get over and win the big game. And when he does, it's going to catapult him into a different stratosphere. And Josh Allen's one of those players where I love his talent, you know, incredible arm strength. He's worked really hard since he came into the league to improve accuracy. You know, Brian Daboll was very key early in his career working with him on accuracy. He's a great leader. His teammates follow him. He's exactly what you want in a franchise quarterback. And he kind of fits the town. He's got that toughness like the rest of the Bills fans do and people that come from that pocket of the country, you know, with the cold winters. Big fan of Josh Allen. It's rare to see a guy of that size with that type of mobility, and he's got the bazooka arm. But the Bills are loaded up. They've got balance on offense. They're finding better ways to get more run game involved in their offense to take some pressure off of Josh Allen. And they've got a lot of deep talent on defense. It's really just a matter of can they get home field and how are they going to compete when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs come postseason time. That's really what it's all about. But Buffalo wins the East. I don't think the Dolphins, Patriots, or Jets will qualify for the postseason. New England is going to be much improved because of coaching. And I think Miami's going to be okay, but I think Buffalo's the only team in the postseason from that division. And the Jets, well, they're still the Jets. They're a complete and total disaster. In the AFC North, a lot of competition. I think Baltimore, once again, is going to win the division simply because they're the best franchise in the division. They've got Lamar Jackson, so you've got MVP talent at quarterback. Derrick Henry is a bowling ball of a human at running back. Great offensive line play. They've got great balance. They have an identity. They know who they are. They want to run the football, be very tough on defense, and I'm a big fan of John Harbaugh. I think Baltimore is going to be super legit. And, you know, Lamar Jackson's in the same boat that Josh Allen is. Great player, dominant player at the position, but now he's got to get over the hump in the postseason. You know, we saw him come apart a couple of years ago in the AFC title game at home against Kansas City when he underperformed, and he got off to a slow start at Buffalo last year, and it proved to be too much to overcome, and the Bills got the win and advanced. So Lamar Jackson in the same boat, but that team is loaded up. Big fan of the Ravens and their organization, and Lamar Jackson is one of the coolest guys in the NFL. And again, his motto, nobody cares, work harder. Like, I'm all about that. I think the Bengals are going to bounce back and make the postseason. They do have a lot of question marks on defense. Are they going to be able to get enough stops? But the reality is with Joe Burrow, he's so good if he stays healthy, and that's a big if because injuries have been really the only thing you can knock him on. But when it comes to decision-making and accuracy and delivery of the football, he's as good as anybody in the NFL. And probably the second-best quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes. So I think Cincinnati will bounce back. A team that didn't make the postseason last year improved enough to get to 10 or 11 wins and qualify for postseason play. So I think in the North, Baltimore wins the division. Cincinnati will be a wild card team. In the AFC South, I like the Houston Texans. I think C.J. Stroud will have a better year 3 compared to year 2. I'm a big fan of their coach, and I think they'll be good enough defensively, and C.J. Stroud will give them enough to where they're going to win the division and be the only team from the South in the postseason. I still think Trevor Lawrence has got potential to be a star, but I've got to see it. The Titans are going to be starting a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward, so they're going to struggle. And then the Colts are, kind of that wild card. What are they going to get at quarterback? I just don't think they're going to qualify. So like one team from the South, the Texans, to get in. The AFC West might be the best division in football. Most likely is the best division in football. And they've got 3 quality teams and one team that's on the up and up. Now, the Las Vegas Raiders, I don't think they're going to make the postseason, but the addition of Pete Carroll, I think, was the right call, because you bring in a guy that knows how to rebuild, and you take a rudderless ship and you put Pete Carroll in charge as the captain. He knows how to rebuild. He's got a philosophy. He's really good at connecting with players. He's going to bring that Pete Carroll energy into the program, and for the first time in a long time, provide direction, much-needed direction to that franchise. He got Geno Smith, a quarterback that he knows. And the great thing about Geno Smith, he's not a top 5 quarterback. He's not a top 10 quarterback. He's not a superstar at the position. But Pete Carroll knows that you're going to get professional quarterback play and preparation on a week-to-week basis. Like, Geno Smith will be locked in. He knows what Pete Carroll wants him to do, and he'll go out there and play good football. And they've added a lot of veterans to their roster as they've retooled, because they're trying to win now. Pete Carroll doesn't have 10 years. He's probably got 3 to 4 years. So they're going to be aggressive to try to win now. And I don't know how many wins the Raiders are going to get, but I think what you're going to see overall is a team that has direction, a team that plays with purpose, and they'll start to develop an identity under the direction of Pete Carroll. Now, the other 3 teams, Broncos, Chiefs, and Chargers, they're all going to make the playoffs. The winner of the division, I think, is Kansas City. I know that we keep waiting for Kansas City to fall off, but I knew, and I've said this time and time again, Patrick Mahomes is John Elway. And John Elway, who played for 16 years, was the juggernaut in the division. And I could only think back to like 4 years where the Broncos really fell off the map under the leadership of Elway. 1988, they missed the postseason by just a scotch, coming off back-to-back Super Bowls. They missed the postseason in 1990 when they went 5-11. They barely missed the postseason in 92 and in 94. But outside of that, they were right there as one of the perennial favorites in the AFC. And the Chiefs are the same thing. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, best coach, best quarterback. They're going to be healthier at wide receiver, and their defense is super loaded. And they've got a great defensive coordinator, and they've got good continuity on the staff. It's just hard for me to pick against Kansas City because I have that much belief in Patrick Mahomes. And yes, they got pounded in the Super Bowl by Philadelphia, but I think they'll be better on the offensive line. So until someone proves that they can get the edge on Patrick Mahomes, I think it's a no-brainer to go with Chiefs to win the division. But the 2 teams right behind them are going to challenge, and Kansas City's going to start to feel the heat because both the Chargers and the Broncos are legit. Denver's coming off a 10-win season under a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. I've talked about it at length, including today, that his understanding of the offense is going to allow him to be a better quarterback this year. He's an underrated athlete who can maneuver and has speed, and now this is starting to become his team where the players follow him. And he's got a great relationship with his coach and Sean Payton, who knows what he's doing. So I've got great confidence in what the Broncos are going to do. I think they get to 11 wins. And the same thing with the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's awesome. And Justin Herbert is everything you want in a quarterback. They're developing the Harbaugh mentality, which is toughness, running the football, play action, and being smart, not making the dumb play. or the poor decision, the costly play. They're going to be smart in how they operate. So there you have it. Chiefs win the West, Texans win the South, Ravens win the North, Bills win the East, and your 7 playoff teams will be Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Houston, Denver, Kansas City, and the Chargers. In the NFC, I think Philadelphia is going to win the East as defending Super Bowl champs, and I think Washington is going to be right behind them, putting pressure on them. But I just believe too much in what Philadelphia's got going. Their play at the line of scrimmage is elite. They dominate with their ground game with Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts is terrific at making that offense go. So I like Philadelphia to win the East. I like Washington to come in second, both teams to be playoff teams. In the NFC North, I like Green Bay to win the division, and I think Detroit probably will come in second. But if you're looking for a team that made the postseason last year that might miss it this year, Detroit would be a strong candidate. And why would that be? Because they lost both of their coordinators, offense and defensive coordinators. Defensive coordinator is now the head coach of the Jets, and their offensive coordinator now the head coach of the Chicago Bears. So Detroit could be one of those teams to fall off, but I think they still have enough talent, and I like the leadership and the precision in the offense of Jared Goff. But keep an eye on Detroit. They've also got some turmoil up front on the offensive line, which was their key strength last year. Minnesota's got too many question marks because they don't have Sam Darnold now. They've got J.J. McCarthy, and I just got to tell you, I don't know what to expect from J.J. after coming off a rookie season where he spent basically the whole year in rehab. But I think Green Bay is going to be effective. So if I had to pick 2 playoff teams right now out of the North, I would say Green Bay and Detroit. And then kind of a wait and see on Chicago and Minnesota. All I know is that this has been a bad week for the Bears in camp because Ben Johnson's been on the offense's ass for a lack of execution, and the quarterback, Caleb Williams, not doing things the way he wants. Turnovers in the red zone, not getting out of the huddle in time, not being in the right play, just not paying attention to detail. But I'm telling you, man, that's exactly what Caleb Williams needs. He needs a guy to bring that type of structure and be on his backside anytime they're not in the right play in the right situation. In the NFC South, I think it's probably a one team makes the postseason. I'll take Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield, I expect to have another big year. I expect them to advance and make the postseason, and I think Tampa Bay wins the division. In the NFC West, it's going to be tough, but I like the 49ers to win the division on the basis of schedule, even though I think they were crazy to give the type of money they did to Brock Purdy. I think the Rams are in, and I think the Hawks get in. So if I had to guess right now, Seattle, the LA Rams, the Seattle Seahawks, 3 teams in the playoffs from the NFC West. Give me the Buccaneers from the South. I'll take Green Bay and Detroit in the North. Well, excuse me. I'll take Green Bay in the North and then give me Philly and Washington in the East. So I think one team in from the NFC North, and I'll take Green Bay. But I definitely think Washington and the Eagles are both going to be in from the NFC East, and I can't wait to see Jaden Daniels. He was great in year 1. I can't wait to see what type of improvements he can make with the type of comfort level he's going to have in year 2 of that system. All right, we'll keep things rolling. You got the Rip City Drive. If you want to jump on board, if you've seen Happy Gilmore 2, please call me, 503-248-0620, and tell me if it's a bust or if it made you laugh, just your take. I don't want any big spoilers. I want to know if it's a good movie so I can prepare myself for tonight. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Yeah, I love this report. They just mentioned it in the national update. At least 100 players from roughly half of the NFL's 32 teams face fines and possible suspension for allegedly selling their allotted tickets to this year's Super Bowl above face value in violation of league policies. Under an agreement between the league and the NFL Players Association, players who violated the rule will be fined 1.5 times the face ticket value and lose their allotted tickets to the next 2 Super Bowls. If they're playing in the game, the players will have the chance to purchase seats. Those who decline the punishment could be suspended by Roger Goodell, league and union sources with direct knowledge of that situation said. The sources said that the number of players involved was in excess of 100, some of whom have already accepted the fines to avoid missing games. A league source declined to identify the players and employees who had sold their Super Bowl tickets or their clubs. That's amazing. According to an NFL memo sent to all 32 teams and obtained by ESPN, an investigation revealed that team employees and players sold tickets to a small number of bundlers who were working with a ticket reseller. Well, of course they were. Look, this has been one of the biggest coups that's been going on for a long time. Lo Neal told me this stuff is. He said that players love doing this. That players would always put in the request and get their allotted number of tickets to the game, and they would turn around and just boom, sell them right away because they can make big cash off of it. So I don't think this is going to end the tickets from being sold, and players are going to always look for a way to get over. That's pretty funny, though. According to media reports before the February game in New Orleans between the Chiefs and Eagles, ticket prices on secondary sites ranged from $2,500 to nearly $3,500 for the cheapest seats, with some tickets fetching over $10,000. Well, that's why they're doing it. If you get an allotted number of tickets to the game and you can turn around and sell them for $3,500 a piece or $10,000 a piece or whatever the price may be, why wouldn't you do that? I'll never forget it, though. One of the we had that situation pop up, me and John Lund. So we were going down to Arizona for the Ducks National Championship game, Oregon and Auburn. And what happened is that I don't know why the radio station did it this way, but they put us on a charter flight with this group of Duck fans that were going down to the title game. And they were going down, like the week before to hang out for the week and go to all the different celebrations and stuff leading up to the game. So we were put on this charter, and we were with this group of people. And what happened is that we got plane tickets and we got some other swag, and then we were also given game tickets to the actual national title game. Well, we were working press, so we had our media passes to the game. And so John and I started talking during the week. We're like, dude, we got these game tickets. We don't need them. What should we do? And so he and I were both like, well, let's just keep it on the down low, but we might as well try and sell them. And I said, well, I know a guy from Portland, Dick, who's down here. He's a ticket broker, and he's down here working the game. So it was like the Saturday before the championship game, and we were staying out closer to Scottsdale. So I hit up my buddy Dick, and I was like, hey, come over. I got tickets. And so he came over, and then we spent about 30 minutes inside the hotel room negotiating. And I can't remember the exact price that we got, but I think we sold them for like $2,500 a piece. So $5,000 total, because Dick knew he was going to be able to turn around and sell those tickets for much more than that. But we did. We got like $2,500 a piece. And I'll never forget Dick. He's like, oh, Chad, you're killing me, man. You're robbing me blind. I'm like, sure I am, bro. Sure I am. So anyways, that was a nice little treat. So we pulled the same gig. We weren't going to use the tickets. What were we supposed to do? So I appreciate Dick. Thanks for doing business, Dick. Well, I appreciate that. All right, let's go out to the phones. I asked for someone to call in if they had seen Happy Gilmore 2, because I'll be watching it tonight. And Raider Mike is on the line. Raider Mike, my friend, long time no chat. How are you, brother?
I'm incredible, man. Been doing Ozzy tributes since he went down. Going to several places and just wailing Ozzy. I got a standing O for Of All Songs War Pigs last night. That's tough to sing as an ex-soldier. It really is.
Well, Mike, it's been a rough week because we lost Malcolm Jamal Warner from the Cosby Show. We lost Hulk Hogan. We lost Ozzy, and then Chuck Mangione passed away yesterday at the age of 84. So it's been a rough week.
There's another one that just went too, and I can't even think of it because I was just like, no, it comes in threes. We all quit dying. Just stop. And enough. Enough death. You take the Prince of Darkness. He should be the lone one. He doesn't need two other guys to go with him. I mean, he's Ozzy. He's probably the most influential dude ever in music as far as rock music goes. He's affected so many bands, and they've all admitted to it.
Okay, hold on. Are you talking about heavy metal? Are you saying that Ozzy's the most influential musician in heavy metal?
Yeah, well, metal itself and rock and roll, because it's not just metal. Nirvana said, they influenced him. Soundgarden, same thing. A lot of bands that you would never expect were influenced by Ozzy.
Okay, but more influential than the Beatles?
No.
Okay.
No. Then you can narrow it down to heavy metal.
Okay.
No, I think maybe today's rock music is more influenced by Ozzy than the Beatles. But out of the chute, all those bands, the greatest bands ever, 60s, 70s, early 80s, they were influenced by the Beatles.
All right, you want to
was influenced by the Beatles.
Hey, Raider Mike, you want an unpopular take? I thought Ozzy mostly sucked. I didn't like his music. He had a few songs that I thought were great, but I'm not a fan. I never really got into the Ozzy music. He had a couple of songs that were fabulous, but for the most part, I was like, I don't get it. I'm not down.
You haven't heard the first three Black Sabbath albums ever, have you?
I have, because my brother made me listen to all of them.
Made you?
Yes.
Your brother had way better tests. All right, on to Happy.
Yes.
Dude, you are going to have one of the best nights of your life. I was crying. I was laughing my ass off while working all day.
Oh, good.
Thank God none of the supervisors came in. I mean, the cameos in this are just insane. Some are just, you're going to go, wow. They're pushing the envelope as far as they can go, and they have all these pro golfers just having the time of their lives. I mean, Daly lives with them. I don't want to give too much away, but, it's just nuts. You're going to love it. And it's all his kids play as real kids.
I heard that.
And they're like him. If they don't get their way, violence solves everything. Comes in handy as all of his old nemesis try and ruin his way to a title.
All right, Raider Mike, I appreciate the call, but your phone, like usual, went sideways. But I got enough from you, my friend. So it sounds like it's going to be good. Shacker said he enjoyed the first 5 minutes. I have not watched any of it yet, but I'm excited to check it out. But it's just important to me that it's not a disaster, like Dumb and Dumber, horrible. It's like, what are you doing, man? If you're going to just put out a piece of garbage, don't put it out. That's why I couldn't believe that, like Ace Ventura, when he came out with Nature Calls, like that was an amazing sequel to the original. It's not too often you can do that and pull it off twice, but yeah, Jim Carrey did it. I just want this to be good, so I can't wait to watch it. And I've been looking at a few other people give their take and their reviews. But I got to be honest with you, like, I just wasn't down with Ozzy's music. I thought it was overrated. There's certain things that some people are really down with, and then I check it out, and I'm like, that's not my thing. Nothing against Ozzy. His music and Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, it just wasn't me. It wasn't my thing. And I do like some heavy metal, don't get me wrong. But I'm just telling you, like, Ozzy's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I've listened to it, and you know what? Not a fan. Overrated. But there's a lot of things that I come across that people love, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not down with that. Like the Oregon Coast. You know how many times people tell me how great the Oregon coast is? Well, I've been out there a bunch. And guess what? I'm going to take my daughter out there next weekend. The Oregon coast is overrated. Every time you're out there, most of the time, the weather's not very good. The water is freezing cold. And you know what? Give me a place in a warm environment where you can get in the water and feel pretty good. I've been to Hawaii. I've been to other places around the world. There are better beaches and oceanfront property than the Oregon coast. Smoked salmon. Yeah, I like salmon, but smoked salmon is not, God's gift to the earth. But everyone out here seems to really love it. I don't like salmon. I've tried it. It's not really my thing. It's really good for you, and I like some of the fatty acids that you get from the fish, but there are other cuts I'd rather have than salmon. But yet a lot of people out here are big on their salmon. Ooh, I love smoked salmon. Yeah, I've tried it. Not really down. But those are just things. And again, I'm a weirdo too, so. But Ozzy Osbourne's one of those things. What else? I tried something else recently. Someone told me it was really good, and I tried it, and I was like, it's not that great. I'll think of it. I've got a long list like that too. But I'm sure you've all got things like that where you've tried something, you're like, I tried it. Yeah, it's all right. And people are going to try and strangle me for my Oregon coast take. Tony in Portland said that when you said Green Bay was going to win the NFC North, I puked in my mouth. Thanks a lot, Chad. Not a true story. He's a Chicago Bear fan. And he said, I hear you about Ozzy. Is Mike still hanging out with that younger college girl? I don't think so. Last time I talked to him, they were together, and now I don't think they're together anymore. But yeah, music is different. Like, for instance, like the Beatles are a good example. Like the Beatles, I really appreciate and respect. And they've got some songs that I really enjoy. But they're not my favorite. But yet, at the same time, I acknowledge that they're the most influential band of all time. And the reason why is because Paul McCartney and John Lennon wrote songs and did things with music and tried so many different things that they were groundbreaking in so many different ways. And honestly, if we're being truthful, Lennon and McCartney never wrote a bad song. They were a terrific tandem, great songwriters. They were perfectionists, and they did it the right way. And the reason why the Beatles I give the nod to is because if you talk to, the biggest rock and roll stars, they all point to the Beatles as the main influence. When the Beatles came over and you had the British invasion and people started listening to their music, they inspired so many of the great rock stars that you and I grew up with because they listened to the Beatles. They wanted to write songs like Paul McCartney and John Lennon. And so they ushered in all of these other, singer and songwriters, different bands, rock stars, and everyone. Their influence was extreme. Steely Dan is another one of those bands, mostly because of their willingness to try just about anything. And what made Steely Dan unique, and I don't know too many bands that do this, but they never had a true band that stuck together over an extended period of time. And the reason behind that, and Donald Fagen has talked about this, they didn't want the same band over and over again because they wanted the ability to try different things. So what they would do is they would bring in different musicians based on the album they were working on to try and get the sound that they were searching for, which I think is interesting. But there's no question that Ozzy had a major influence. And he's got a couple of songs that are awesome. I love Perry Mason. Bark at the Moon is terrific. But by and large, just not my thing. Lynyrd Skynyrd's got some great work, and some of the guitar work is sensational. Not a big Lynyrd Skynyrd fan. But I'm like you. I listen to everything. My musical tastes as I've gotten older have definitely widened a little bit. Like, I'm a huge fan of classic rock. There's some heavy metal and grunge that I'm into, and it really just depends on the mood I'm in. But as I've gotten older, like, I really love jazz, and I listen to jazz a lot. And I love to get the vinyl and listen to jazz on vinyl, but I'm a big jazz fan. Classical jazz, smooth jazz. I listen to a lot of jazz music. I really enjoy it. And I like going to jazz bars And there's a couple of good ones in Portland, and I like going to jazz festivals. But, yeah, really, at this point, I mean, that's how I do it. I just let my mood dictate what type of music I'm going to listen to. Do you do that? Because there's different music. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if I'm feeling a certain way, instead of just trying to hide it or suppress it, sometimes I just go with it. So if I'm sad, I'll play music that I'll listen to music that plays into that. If I'm happy or cheerful about something, I'll play music that supports that. I just kind of let my mood direct the type of music I'm going to listen to. But I do the same thing with TV shows and movies. Like, I let my mood kind of direct the type of stuff that I'm going to go into. Lately, I've been very looking for nostalgia, so I've been going back and watching some old Bronco games with John Elway that I haven't watched in a while on YouTube. I love doing that. But I like picking music and movies or entertainment that kind of I just follow my mood. Because it's not normal. The idea that you're going to be happy every day, that's this whole idea of happiness. Like, what do you think life's going to bring? Nothing but happiness every day? I think in order to really experience life, you have to touch on all of your emotions. And in life, you're going to have days where you're happy. You're going to have days of great sadness. You're going to have days where you have a lot of energy. You're going to have days where you don't. Why would you want to run from all the different feelings and emotions you can experience in life? And how can you experience the really good times without, the trials, right? Like, you need a balance of those things in your life. And you're going to get them whether you want them or not, so you might as well embrace it. All right, there you go. We'll keep things rolling here. Raider Mike, I appreciate the call before you went Darth Vader on me. And he says, I'm going to really enjoy Happy Gilmore, too. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Michael Shacker's with me. And Pup City's coming up at Moda Center on Sunday. Registration starts at 9, and then the walk will kick off at 10. And I'll be down there with Puppy Shots. Join us, 1.3K, and it's going to support a very good charity, One Tail at a Time, which is doing some terrific work here in Portland. All right, I was talking earlier about that Rose Quarter area and really the idea of a new arena and how you would want to, build up the area around it like we see in Atlanta and other places around the country where you have all of these different businesses to support, kind of a life around the arena, which would be really nice. My man Eddie has hit me up and said, Chad, I worked at Kachina from 98 to 2001. I used to wait on Mike Dunleavy Sr. and his family whenever he came into the restaurant. I was working. I waited on him as soon as he sat down. I wouldn't ordered his kettle, one bought martini up with a side of soda water. I left the Lake Oswego keg and went there. Started as a busser and a host and was the best waiter at that place. Man, I have some stories about that place and the people who are no longer with us, like Steve Snapper Jones. Yeah, I went to Kachina. The whole, I was younger then, but seeing the new arena and then the stuff around it, at that time, I just thought it was really cool. It's funny, Eddie, you said you used to work at the keg in Lake Oswego. I worked at the keg in Vancouver, and my first two jobs in the history of my life, Red Robin. I started out, and I got a job there right when I turned 16 years old, August of 91. I started out as a dishwasher. I mean, some of the hardest work, but yet most rewarding work that you could imagine. Because as a dishwasher at that day and age at Red Robin, I was like a slave to anything any of the cooks needed or wanted. And, we would work until about 3 in the morning. The Friday and Saturday nights were chaos. But after I left Red Robin, I got a job at the keg in Vancouver. I worked a couple of nights as a salad tender. So I would make spinach and Caesar salads, and I'd wear this white suit, and I'd wear the chef hat. And then a couple of nights a week, I was a busboy. And I really enjoyed that because I worked with some cool people at that restaurant. And that's where I worked before I got the job at Health Experience, which I was really excited about. But, yeah, the keg. And that place was fun, man. And there were some cool people there. But, on a Friday and Saturday night, busboy was like one of the greatest gigs of all time as a high schooler. Because you'd go into work and then you'd walk out on a Friday or Saturday night with like 60 or 70 bucks in your pocket. And you felt like you were on top of the world because you had nothing but cash in your pocket. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Cash for food, cash for Taco Bell, cash for gas. Everything you needed was right there. I love being a busboy. That was fun. And then Eddie also said, the type of music and film we enjoy reflects the type of spirit we are leading inside. I'm right with you on the Beatles and Ozzy, though. All right, there's my man Eddie. I got this disturbing message. I saw this pop across on X. This is coming out from Jimmy Dore. He said just now on the Southwest flight number 1496 Burbank to Las Vegas, pilot had to dive aggressively to avoid midair collision over the Burbank airport. Myself and plenty of people flew out of their seats and bumped their heads on the ceiling. A flight attendant needed medical attention. Pilot said his collision warning went off and he needed to avoid the plane that was coming at us. Wow. Okay. I mentioned, before that I can't control the way that I die or the way that I leave the planet, but there is a list of ways that I do not want to go. And if I can avoid dying that way, that would be nice. Airline crash is right at the top of the list. But this is what I'm talking about. And there's been times where I've been, flying into a busy area, like Los Angeles or New York. And we saw about that accident in D.C. I'm like, how do they keep track of all those planes? How can they do that? There's so many planes up in the sky. How does that not happen from time to time? But I cannot imagine, that would be one way for me to just have a heart attack and just die. I'm out. I don't care if we have a collision or not, but I can't take this situation. But can you imagine that? The pilot goes right into, evasive action, and it's not like he has time to prepare people for that maneuver. He has to do it, and people are, flying around the plane. Oh, my gosh. That's freaky. Jimmy Dore. Just now on Southwest Flight 1496 Burbank to Las Vegas, pilot had to dive aggressively to avoid a midair collision over the Burbank airport. Myself and plenty of people flew out of their seats and bumped heads on the ceiling. Flight attendant needed medical attention. Pilot said his collision warning went off, and he needed to avoid the plane coming at us. Wow. Okay. I don't need that in my life. Goodness gracious. It is pretty amazing when you think about how many flights, day in and day out, off the ground, up in the air, land back down. I mean, just thousands and thousands of planes. And yet there's so few accidents. I mean, like, of all the things that we have done, like, you have to admit, like, the innovation and how efficient air travel is, even though there's a lot of annoying things that come with it, it's pretty remarkable that it operates the way that it does. So few accidents, so many planes up in the sky, and they're scheduling or they run on time most of the time. It's a pretty darn good industry. It's pretty amazing if you ask me. It's pretty reliable. I'm blown away by it. And what that accident that took place in D.C. a few months ago, that tragedy, I think that was the first major airliner crash since '09. I mean, that's a long time. What was that, 15, 16 years? No major accident among any of the major carriers in the U.S.? That's wild to me. Oh, my goodness. I do not want evasive action. I don't need the pilot's, collision warning going off. But can you imagine going into a dive all of a sudden? Whoo! Oh, my goodness. All right, so Travis right now took his dad to the Yankee game. I think they're tied up at 2. I don't want Philadelphia to win that game. I want the Yankees to get the win so Trav can enjoy the night with his father. But that's pretty sweet. He got that picture taken with Susan Waldman. And that's pretty awesome. All right, before we get out of here, I just want to remind everyone, coming up on Sunday, there's still time for you to join us in the Pup City Dog Walk, 1.3K, so it's not overbearing. Registration will start at 9. There's going to be great vendors on hand for both humans and dogs. Blaze, the trail cat, will be down there. Blazer dancers. And we can hang out and enjoy a good morning and have a chance to hang out with our dogs. So come down and join us. It's going to be right there next to Motor Center in the Rose Quarter. 9 o'clock is when the registration opens, and the walk will kick off at 10. Pup City 2025. All right, big thanks to all of you for listening. Big thanks to Michael Shacker. You guys have a great night, and I'll be back on the Rip City Drive Monday at 3. And next week, Phil Steele is going to join the program on Wednesday.